Dr. Deb. Today we're going to talk about Larry's brother, Stephen. Stephen was a perfectionist because they both had that father that insisted on winning and you got to go for the gold, but there was more to that father than all that. Their father didn't think they existed. He didn't treat them as if they existed unless they were doing something spectacular, and then he could give them a slap on the back. Well, neither one was a sports person like their father, but Stephen went on to graduate school in astrophysics because he figured that if he could really win a prize in that, one of the hardest subjects there is, then their father would definitely love him. See, the truth is, the boys never felt loved. They were not paid enough attention to even feel like they existed by their father, unless they just did something spectacular and outstanding. So Stephen really worked hard. And when it came time to get his prize that he thought he would get as a graduate student for his dissertation, it did not work. He wasn't selected. I was inspired for this story by a story that literally took place in 1991 of a graduate student at the University of Iowa who killed a whole bunch of people. I think it was 5 people, faculty members and chairmen of different levels of his university in something like astrophysics, because he didn't win a prize. So I want to talk about perfectionism, where this comes from and why and how a person lives with it. The truth of the matter is, Stephen isn't alone. There's a lot of perfectionists out there. Sometimes you become a perfectionist because your parents rely on you so much because they are so weak and unable to cope that the child has to take the place of the parent and be the parent's parent. And when a child is nervous about doing that job right, well, that can lead to perfectionism. After all, what does a child know? They're winging it. So they start to worry, especially when people's health and safety are at stake. It's an awfully big responsibility. That was not the case with Stephen. His parents were both highly successful. I didn't mention his mother, Larry's and his mother. She was a corporate person and did very, very well and kept out of the way of everything. I don't think she was too happy with her husband and her home life. Who knows what she was doing when she was supposed to be working late? No one really knew, and she was never around. And when she was around, she was kind of perfunctory. It was a sweet hello, but that's about it. A pat on the head, as if the kids were strangers. They actually felt closer to this very distant father because at least he had an expectation of them. He wanted them to succeed, and that was better than not even caring about anything they were doing. So the problem is, of course, that their father, who wanted them to succeed, was really not paying attention to them the rest of the time. They didn't have much. They had crumbs of attention from their parents. But that is how you can create a perfectionist. And so Stephen's whole mind, his whole attitude, his whole thinking process was all about, what can I do to succeed? How can I be better and better and better at what I have to do than what I am? Now, the saddest part about perfectionism, it's not just going for a goal. That's a good thing. It's not liking yourself before you got to the goal. And if you should achieve the goal, for some reason it rings hollow and you still don't like yourself. I wonder about a person like Jeff Bezos, right? Who goes and tries to be the richest man on earth. He doesn't make it, but he sure does do well building Amazon, losing his marriage in the process. What is driving a person like that? It's not good enough to be a millionaire. You have to have 10 million, no 100 million, no a billion. Why? What do you gain? See, the perfectionist is not operating from rationality. Same thing with Bill Gates, who also lost his marriage in the process. The perfectionist is not rational any more than any of us are rational. We aren't. We're all emotional beings. We are not satisfied with ourselves, even when we make the goal. Oh, that must not have been the goal after all. It should be this other goal. And they climb a little higher. And the ones who can climb higher, everybody applauds them, so at least they've got that. But inside themselves, they're not happy. Inside themselves, there's still a yearning for more. There's still a drive and a desire for more. Why? Because they don't like themselves. They're not happy with who they are underneath it all. They aren't enough. It's not just they haven't done enough. They aren't enough. And how in the world do you rectify this? How in the world do you make this good for yourself? Well, of course, being a therapist, I believe in therapy, but I really hope that you'll get something out of this video to help you through that question. The answer, I feel, is that you have to talk to that perfectionist part of yourself. And you have to reassure the perfectionist part of yourself that the rest of you is good enough. Now, how do you get to that place? You get to that place by recognizing that you are not your perfectionism. You are not your perfectionism. Your perfectionism is a part of you that got taken on in early childhood because you needed it to cope, just like all the other stuff we've been talking about in all the playlists on this channel. You need your parts so that you can cope with the stresses of life, especially as a kid, because the kid doesn't really have any other way to get their head above water. After all, they're a kid. What resources do they have? So these parts come out to help them. But that's not who they are, and that's not who you and I are either. We have a self, which is like a soul. Our self is special and wonderful. It's got a big picture look at things and doesn't have to rely on simply jumping over hoops in order to succeed. It's not about what we do, it's about who we are. Our self gets that. The soul within us gets that. It's who we are. So where is that soul? Why doesn't Stephen have that coming out and helping him now? The answer is our souls got buried because all these parts needed to come out and protect us as we were growing up. So the soul that got buried by this perfectionist part, which came from his father, and the image also, let's face it, of his mother being on such a high level in the corporate world. You need to succeed. You need to be way up there. And if you are, then you exist. If you're good, then you're really worth noticing. If you don't get noticed and you don't exist. Or at least that's how the kid would feel. So obviously this part was trying to be helpful because those were the terms and conditions, maybe unspoken, but nevertheless, those were the terms and conditions laid out by their parents, Larry's and Steve's parents, by their actions. They don't have to come out and say it. They just have to show it. We learn so much more by what we're shown than what we're told. In fact, research shows that if there's a contradiction between the words we say and our body language wins in terms of what the other person watching believes is real and true. So for Steve and Larry, their parents' attitudes conveyed everything they needed to know about life. No one had to tell them. So Steve took on this idea that he had to be perfect. And if he would only be perfect, he would win his parents' love. And when that didn't happen, his world came crashing down. But there's a truth here. His world was crashed down long before he didn't win the student competition for his dissertation. His marriage was on the rocks too, just like Larry's. Who can live with a perfectionist? Think about this. When you're a perfectionist for yourself and you have to toe a certain mark, you do that to everyone around you. And every single person in your life feels it and is not happy about it. And you know what? The perfectionist can't stop. Because until such time as they learn that they have a self, and that self is truly good and wonderful, that self is able to see the truth, see the big picture, and get all their talents in their mind and recognize the completeness of who they are. It's not just this one thing that you do something perfectly. It's every part of you, everything good about you. Yourself can see that and know it. But again, how do you get to self? I had an idea. Comment below if you would like my download of me going through an exercise with you, just a few minutes, of finding yourself and separating yourself out, a video download. So comment below and I will email you the link for you to get that. How's that sound? Because that is what all therapists help their clients do, and that's what Steve needed, and I'm giving it to you. It's going to be yours for free.